In the town, we took a little trip along Colonel Platten down the mighty Mississippi. We took a little bacon and we took a little beans, and we fought blooming British in a town in New Orleans, where we fired our guns and the British kept a coming. There wasn't as many as there was a while ago. Well, we fired once more. They began to run along down the Mississippi to the Gulf of Mexico. Well, we looked down the river till we see the British come. There must have been 100 of them beating on the drum. They stepped so high and they made the bugles ring. We stood beside our cotton bales and never said a thing. And then we fired our guns and the British kept it coming. There wasn't as many as there was a while ago. Well, we fired once more. They began to run on down the Mississippi to the Gulf of Mexico. Mama said we could take them by surprise if we didn't fire a musket till we looked them in the eye. So we stood quiet still till we see the faces well, and we opened up our muskets and we really gave them well. We fired our guns, we really scared them coming, and there wasn't as many as there was a while ago. Well, we fired once more, but they scared of running on down the Mississippi to the Gulf of Mexico. Even from my home from the captain of the day. Till the battle's melted down and they came back and down the theater and we fought another round. Stuffed his head with cannonballs and powdered his behind. And we could touch the powder off the gate off his mind. Well, we fired our guns, really kept it coming, and there wasn't as many as there was a while ago. Well, we fired once more. They began to run on down the Mississippi to the Gulf of Mexico. Well, they ran through the briars, ran through the brambles, they ran through the bushes where the rabbits wouldn't go. They ran so fast the hounds couldn't catch them all down the Mississippi to the Gulf of Mexico. Well, we fired our guns, we really kept our guns, and there wasn't as many as was a while ago. Well, we fired once more. They began running on down the Mississippi to the Gulf of Mexico. Down the Mississippi to the Gulf of Mexico. Down the Mississippi to the Gulf of Mexico. Down the Mississippi to the Gulf of Mexico.
Alexa, exit. The state. Okay, sorry everybody. Sometimes she's temperamental. Lots of ladies are. You gotta be careful sometimes. Everybody, it's day 16, story 16. We're going to myth bust a lot today. We're absolutely going to answer a lot. And I mean a lot of questions by a lot of First Peoples, a lot of Canadians, confusion. And you know what, everybody? You have a right to be confused. Because history gets rewritten all the time. All the time. Today, day 16, story 16, hang on to your seats. We're going from 1814 all the way through, focused heavy, from Malta to Egypt to Russia, Ukraine, all the history. We're even going to get into the Donbass. Folks, I got a question for you. Do you all know the red flag with the yellow star sickle in it? Do you know what that means? Communism, right? You would say USSR, Dave. Hang on to that thought when we get back to this and that reality before the end of this video, because this is going to light you up. We're going to go through the history of brucellosis, a lot like TB without astronomically negative consequences. However, similar impacts. Absolutely used as the first bioweapons, and then into TB. And into TB, we're going to answer all those message questions. The First Peoples who are angry, who feel that I didn't represent residential school genocide according to historical facts. We're going to start that right today. We're going to go through absolutely all of it, including Russia, Ukraine, all of the players that everybody knows in the colonials, from imperial to colonials, that crown power, that devastation in the world, all over the world today, for lots of folks, almost 27% of the world's population, all in large poverty or facing existential economic threats from that foreign power. So we start in 1814. Now that's the Americans fighting out. The 13 colonies have expanded across USA. They're pushing the British out. 1814, it was in New Orleans, Louisiana. These are the southern states, pushing the English into the Spanish territories out of America. They've had enough. Now, folks, at the same time in history with the British Empire, there's Malta. Malta doesn't win. They are a country old. We're into Eritrea and the same history of Ethiopia. And yes, folks, this is tied directly to Jesus Christ. You even will have the overlap of the Ottoman Empire, its colonial history, Russia and its limited colonial history. But in 1814, Malta, with absolutely direct ties to Jesus Christ, no joke, Paul, the Apostle Paul, ended up shipwrecked after the death of Jesus. For those who don't know the history of New Testament going forward, how we get Russian Orthodoxy and all kinds of narratives of Christianity, even the Knights Templar and all of it. Malta saw all of it. You got Italian history right out of Rome, the Roman Empire, the Greek history, the Ottoman Empire history. 11 empires against Malta, an island situated between Africa and Sicily. And of course, think of the Roman Empire from the Jesus years, and of course prior, but the Jesus years up to 1200. Malta marred in conflict after conflict after conflict. And, like I said, an island grouping right between Africa and Rome. Italy's colonial history there, Britain, France, and the list goes on. You want to see treachery of the British Empire and promises? 1814, Britain took it, slapped everybody down. Britain went on to go after Egypt, takes Egypt down, colonizes. This is the height and power of the British Empire. Nobody is safe. And even France, at peak periods working with Britain, they are powerful. They're powerful. Russia, history of the Entente as Imperial Russia. We go through those years with brucellosis. Plagues Malta to this day. There's been an absolute cure for brucellosis since the 1850s, folks. But yet, Maltese don't ever see that materialize, even now today. Go through Britain, absolutely, all the way through to Crimea, so 53 onward, takes Egypt, destroy the Muslims. It is Christian Church of England, power of the colonial empire. Malta suffers from brucellosis all the time, making them weak, feeble. We see from Egypt, Britain take all the way through and take their Suez Canal. They take it. It's their Suez Canal. Colonial power, pressed, railway, the rest goes on and on. The evil growth. A real Nazi power, a real crown colonial. You guys can read the history. Britannica, pick any one of the top 10 world experts who've written mass amounts on this. They hardly differ. It's all about, well, this this English force made this mistake, or these little odds and ends, not really changing the outcome of the historical count of what happened. You see, France, Britain, Ottoman Empire together, Turkey together against Russia. You see them go with Russia, but it's two different narratives. Folks, before we go any further, as we get into these real details, clear brucellosis press from the British Empire as a bioweapon against Malta. We see it all through Egypt, even into what we'll later see in residential school genocide. Now, this is the part, before I go any further with Russia, Ukraine, and the 1921-22 revolution to those independent republics. Before we go any further, I want to stop right there. This is the part where everybody has to understand there is no United Nations. This is colonial France, Britain, Japan, Italy, not USA, not Russia. They are not superpowers. The colonials are. It's a colonial world under League of Nations. USA had just said no and went into isolation. America first. Okay, everybody? Good so far? This is the part where we go over to tuberculosis, residential school genocide. Yes, Canadians and First Peoples. No, I did not state that it was 8,000 per every 100,000 kids during that period all the way up to 1949. Now, before everybody gets excited, because I got a lot of slams on this in Messenger, okay, from my video. You guys, that is League of Nations, and there was no cure, absolutely no cure for TB before 1949. It's also the cementing of major human rights in the new UN by the founding members, Russia, China, USA, UK, France, under New World transformation, sovereignty of each UN state, and appreciation of peoples, where you find those first peoples cemented, all kinds of peoples, okay? So that's why I put the brakes on there before I went any farther on TB. It's horrific. I'll give you the numbers officially at the time. Yes, it's still genocide, but it's a pre-system that no longer operates anymore, and there was no absolute cure. Were they still placing children at record numbers, 8,000 and 100,000 in those periods, 20s, 30s, 40s, in Canada, residential school genocide? Absolutely. All population of First Peoples not in residential school and other Canadian school systems outside of residential schools, it was 700 and 100,000, folks. It is very hard to get TB. You need long-term exposure, and often TB doesn't manifest till many years later, damage is done kind of thing. You needed early treatment. Chest x-rays has proven, we know who came up with the cure. And just so everybody knows, just like brucellosis for Malta, the cure was out in 1853, and all the British troops remain uninfected, all treated, supposed to have Malta as a protectorate, which they changed over and over. Here's some independence. Oh, we took it back. We're the crown. Horrific abuse, horrific lies, and absolute autocracy, by the way, when they were given room for elections, when it didn't go to the Catholic Church's decision, meaning it was following more of the Italian, Roman, Sicily narrative, the Eastern Roman narrative in the majority. UK, which was the British Empire at the time, ordered elections off and appointed their own governance every time. Removed the powers. UK did it all the time. So anyone talking autocracy, you will see in the Balkans, right through the Black Sea, the Rock of Gibraltar, all those things, and all that time, UK was notorious, especially with Malta, not only biological weapon when they had the absolute cure for brucellosis. Those people suffered absolutely through the whole British reign. Even when they became no longer viable for Britain, Britain still continued to do numbers on them, okay? Now, we know that's a clear genocide by the UK in the form of absolutely lower life expectations, worse quality of life for the Maltese people. And absolutely, if you don't believe that UK was doing that when they had the cure for literally 150 years through Malta and everything that they imposed in their reign of terror over those people who never saw the light of day. You can pick a colonial empire. They had their roots in Malta, just like Egypt's, which is what we get to in 1921 now. Everyone ready? So we know genocide. It's there in Canada. British Empire over Canada. French Empire too limited in Quebec. But absolutely joint forces. Just look at the Entente. Look at that. And you'll see Russia versus France, Britain, and absolutely Turkey. Colonial powers of the time. The remnants of the Ottoman Empire, okay? So we get to 1921. Russia goes into a revolution against the Bolsheviks, the full-on communists. You will find all the allies, even colonials, tried to stand up with Russia's white, blue, red flag. White, blue, red flag against Soviet Union, who is Western Ukraine, a whole pile of independent states today, all unitary, were all the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, forcing the 84 regions into what would become communism. The Allies, the Entente, fought with what is currently the Republic of Russia now today, and that flag. I'm going to say it again. You can look this all up. You're going to find it's true. 1921 Civil War. Ukraine, Western Ukraine, Zelensky. Georgia, with who? Joseph Stalin, the communist USSR, defeats Vladimir Putin's ancestors in 1921-22, who created one republic because they're federalists. They want federalism, but they lost, folks. They lost that war. All of those 84 republics lost against the Soviet Union, which was Ukraine. Look where Joseph Stalin was born. Look what they built. Look at the genocide that happened against the Jews. Nazification of even Joseph Stalin, which would go into after World War II and parts of World War II, and the absolute abuse of the Jews. It's there. Okay? So we all know that history. But how come nobody focuses on white, blue, red Russian Republic flag that had a civil war against the Soviet Union to be communism, lost even with the Allies helping them, overwhelmed, they lose, Soviet Union grows strong. Obviously in the war, the Soviet Union went with the Allies to get the power. But at the fall of the Soviet Union, folks, look at 1921-22. Then World War I, they lost. World War II, they lose still. But then we see the fall of communism. But in 1952, TB, King George VI, dies. TB finds a cure from a Russian America, an imperial Russian American who did all of his work in America. He was a Jewish descent. He moved from Imperial Russia before all of that. He found the cure for TB. Absolutely in 49, released out in mass by 53 with 3 key doses. Now is where we have our problems. We watch all the numbers of poverty go down. This is where I get my 2%, because now, officially, World War II post, King George gone, but Canada continues on from 1952. Residential school genocide with the cure, just like brucellosis for Malta, continues on forever and a day in Canada. Even today, we're still having major breakouts. You have to ask the question, why are they all not inoculated? We're a first world country, right? The only explanation, especially in residential school genocide, and the ability to harvest TB, it takes a long time to become infected. You don't just, someone sneezes in your face and you get TB. You have to take on TB for a long, long, long time. You'll find none of the British soldiers, they were all inoculated or had the drugs in 1853 for brucellosis. And of course, Canada was already dispersed amongst the drugs, but not for First Peoples. Children taken and put in residential schools all the way through, even through Justin Trudeau, even just last year in northern Alberta. Why is there not mass inoculation? Why is there, even with even the latest great cure, but even though there was a 3-tier treatment, why was that not available for residential school children? I think we can all agree that it is a weapon and it was weaponized. Anyone saying it's not is just a Nazi in disguise, because how could you say that unless you're the kind of person who denies the Jewish Holocaust? Same thing happened to those poor children. We're not talking adults, men, women, and children. At least the kids are with the parents. We're talking parents beaten, even raped or arrested and beaten, all of it, and kids seized at gunpoint, thrown in a vehicle, driven away, and no one knows where they go. The kids often got out of those schools. If they lived at those huge mortality rates, can you imagine those early years, 8% mortality rate? Think about that. Think about that. It's unbelievable. It means for every 10 kids, one's going to die of tuberculosis. Every 10 kids, at least, for a number of years. And then it was for every 20 kids, one kid is going to disappear, whatever happened to him, right? I mean, not just once, twice. I mean, it goes on and on. It's always called TB, but the reality is through extreme physical abuse, accidents, oops, I hit the small child too hard, split them open, they're bleeding. Quick, throw them in the TB ward, lock them in there for a few days, leave them in there. If they don't bleed out or whatever, they'll sleep with the other TB kids and they're going to get TB. Just leave them in there for a few days. That was often done to the residential school children. It was a punishment, a death sentence, folks. Ministered no cure, starved, just defenseless children. No parents there, no nobody. Just the government's sworn loyal church under state, hired by the government. That's what they did. It's been done in history. Look at Malta, you'll find it. Which now we're going to go back now to 1921-22. I hope people, if you got devices, please go look at the Russian Civil War, even on Wikipedia. And it's there, and I looked to make sure it overlaps Britannica, that it overlaps the best 10 articles written. And there you're going to find the Don Republic, which is Donbass. For 2 years, they were independent. They had a republic. They had federalism. Then they became communist. They lost. Vladimir Putin's Russia, same flag, same system, same states we're talking about. Remember, everybody, Joseph Stalin, Georgia, was the communist leader. He was out of Georgia and he did all that. Ukraine, Western Ukraine, not the Ukraine you guys see today. You see Ukraine in league with him. The Western Ukraine. A river runs through it. Western Ukraine, absolutely full-on communist, absolutely full-on Nazi Jew, genocidal, man. Almost as bad as Germany. Everyone will tell you this. Poland says whatever, but who were the genocidal areas? We can't just make up stories. You're going to see the Entente. They lost. You're going to see the Allies with the same ancestors of Vladimir Putin, same flag, same key players. It wasn't called Donbass, same region, but it was called Don Republic. And you'll see Don Tisk and Luhansk right there. It's even before Luhansk, but they're Donbass. It's one region. You'll find it there, folks. It was a republic for 2 years. Lost and fell to communism. So, in 1991, communism falls. The republics of that period who wanted their independence wanted their federalism they had in their history. They were federal free republics for 2 years. They lost to the communists. When they did, and I've said this so many times, guys, I've said they did their whole referendum. Yes, we want to leave the Soviet Union. Nobody said, hey, oh, by the way, you won't be in a federalism. You won't get your division of powers. All that you had before communism, we're not restoring that to you. We're restoring you to the communist system, the central power. You know, you're the majority speaking, you're the majority of religious East Orthodoxy, but I know you thought you were leaving communism, you're going to be free again, but in comes the US and says, it would be better if we align you with the communist history group and the absolute Nazi component of the group. I can't make this history up. It's even on Wikipedia. If any of you doubt me, Russian Revolution 1921-22. Careful on the names, look at the maps, and you will find who was what, where was what, and the later Jewish Nazi style, absolute under Joseph Stalin, massacre of the Jews. And I hate to tell you this, folks, it isn't old Vladimir Putin and his flag, his membership, his oblasts and those that he wishes to free from Ukraine. It's the other way around. Notorious histories like this, folks. Notorious histories. What's with the flip-flop? Well, Democrat, Republican, folks. That's as sad as it is. Americans got it this time on the Republican side. Democrats, that side. Right now, today, USA sending arms to Taiwan. China said, no, don't you do it after the vote today to throw Russia out of the Human Rights Council, which is really a good thing. It's a blessing. It now separates USA and Russia and all of the Arctic, in the Arctic Council, all the Arctic peoples, the First Peoples. It takes away communism. Absolutely. It takes away communism and the colonials. You're now left with Russia and USA. That's great news. It's bad news if you're Canadian crown loving. It's really bad news. All the narratives, undrippers and all that, all these non-binding agreements. You've just hit the wall called USA and Russia. And when people who don't understand that in First Peoples, when I say P5, the United Nations Security Council, #1 organ of the UN, 5 most powerful nations in the world, individually or all together, when they do it all together, look out. Look at the vaccines. You see their supply and value chains. Russia's no joke. They're proving it now. Dollar's already right back to normal. Largely all their wealthy people suffered. All the tyrants suffered that the West calls tyrants. They're definitely part of the oligarchs. But what of the West and what of the European oligarchs? They're only getting stronger. Look how much we owe. When we get into TB, whole world's got the cure for TB in 1949. Absolutely, by 1953, King George has died in 52. Canada doesn't get finalized. We escaped. Canada won. Jewel of colonialism. First build, first design. When I talk about 1867, that's the Constitutional Act of Canada. Highest law of Canada. your rule of law, which is all crown colonial. It gives all the crown powers, all the customary law titles. And then there's unwritten law that gives them superpowers, and they do codify their superpowers. They tell you, clear. 1876 is the Indian Act of Canada. The template in this title was the 1982 Egypt. That's what they administered. They did it to Malta too, guys. Look at the last history of Malta and what they did there, and when they removed their rights, said, we're going to impose the colonial system on you. We're going to appoint who we're going to have in charge, and we're going to even throw away your elections when they don't suit what we want. And ever since that time, and it's all starting in 1882, 6 years after the Indian Act, Canada won. Great design. It works so well. And they continue to genocide the First Peoples, and they go on to do it in Africa. Egypt's part of Africa, but it goes on all through the world. You'll find it in all kinds of island jewels of the colonial empire. Look at the history of Russia. Look what happened. We go on later to the Crimean War. Russia again, 2014. And what was that over? Donbass, Don Republic, 1921 to 22. Go look at it, guys. Can't make this up. My life depended on it. Ukrainian? Which Ukrainian? Soviet Ukraine, which they say it isn't, or Nazi Ukraine, because they were both. They definitely went there. They went full genocidal, just like Nazi Germany. That's that Ukraine. My ancestor Ukrainians are all from that Imperial Russia, Imperial Belarus, and Imperial Ukraine. Whole different set of boundaries. Those are my ancestors, all the people I know back in Alberta, all the old farmers, 5 and 6 generations, just like my family. They're not those Ukrainians. They never went through any of that history. None whatsoever. Folks, one day the Allies are friends and against that communism. Next thing you know, oh no, Putin's the terrible guy. Let's go with those with the historical Nazi Soviet Socialist Republic, i.e. communism narrative with massive genocides that everybody keeps ignoring. That's how I went into some stories and I've been leading up to this. Because we let the media, Canada, we let these things go just to see just how radical and how far depraved Canada really is. I'm excited. I'm glad that Russia and USA are now dissolved of the Human Rights Council. Now we don't have any communists tied directly to the Arctic Council. We have absolutely no colonial superpowers of any time period, including today's P5 members attached to the Arctic Council. Now they observe, but all P5 are allowed to observe. Now, going forward with human rights, you have to have Russia and USA with you. They're the only 2 P5 powers of the Arctic Council, I mean the Arctic Ocean, all of that, an entire ocean really. I mean, Greenland's there, but UK, France, observer states, they're not members because they're not in the Arctic Circle. Even when you take the next ring, which goes through Treaty Indian land, we're getting into Treaty 8 and all the other northern peoples and overlaps of all the treaty numbers in the northern half of provinces overlapping into the Arctic. Even in the next Arctic ring, you still don't find those powers there. And you're already outside of all of that ocean now. Now what? Right? It's going to be incredible. It's incredible where the world's going. And I'm not entirely sure the USA has forgotten everything. As we listen to that version of 1814, the Battle of New Orleans, where they chased the Brits right out to Spanish lands, South America, say, get going. So it makes you wonder. Start looking at history. Is what USA shows us exactly what is, or is there something rising there? Because things with Russia being booted out of the UN Human Rights Council, It makes things easier on our UN path forward. We still got to go to all the P5, but now we also can bring forward the Arctic Council, which means you absolutely have an audience, absolutely, with the United States of America and Russia. No doubt about it. They're both going to be there. Excellent. I hope you enjoyed this story. I hope that you go through these key dates in history and look at what I'm saying and what is what, because we have a clear children's genocide in armed conflict in Canada post-1949. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. 4,000 out of 100,000 dead residential school children claimed on TB. Now, all these bodies are there, ground penetrating radar, working diligently. There's over 2,000 now discovered officially. We need 5,200 to hit that 3% of the total of that time period. We're going post King George VI 52, but it's there, folks. Don't worry. And that is what we need to know. We need to see that there are even lots more bodies guaranteed. It would be nice to get the church records. It would be nice if the church testified against all colonial history in relation to all First Peoples of everywhere genocide at the hands of the Catholic Church. I think if that happened, you'd watch all the rest of the dominoes fall. And remember, the Catholic Church is only responsible for 48%, folks. Numbers going to be much, much higher, but everything starts with the beginning. Everything starts at the beginning, and we did get in some Anglican in their searches, so it's early. It's going to take a longer time, but we're going to show the first chiefs, the First Peoples chiefs in Métis, Inuit, and absolutely seated, unceded Treaty Indians just how to report, who to go to, where it's going to go, and how. It's not going to be made public, but we're going to get through that. And now, I can at least say this, the Arctic Council is there now, and it's terrific. Thanks, that's my video. Share, go look it up yourself, and don't even just do Wikipedia, even though Wikipedia does show all the Allied forces in the conflict. Go find Ukraine, go find Don Republic, which is Donbass. When you click on it, you're going to find Don Tisk. Don Tisk is there, Luhansk, they're there. That's what they were given. I've said this, I've been called a liar, I've been called, but yet there's so much historical papers, even in Britannica. Yet apparently Canadian media isn't able to do this research. I guess I'm the only person able to complete these tasks. Somehow the media, with all their millions and millions of dollars and their global billions in some of these industries, aren't able to do this kind of journalist work. They're not able to do it. They can't research. They're not able to contact countries. They're not able to contact real doctorate experts of the highest universities in the world. Apparently, I'm the only one, an economist and a welder by trade, third-class citizen in Canada. Apparently, I'm the only one because it's just so hard for anybody else with all the money. Is it because they're part of the problem? Oh yeah, that's exactly what it is. Hang on to your seats. It's only going to get more and more explosive as we transition into more and more things, more and more stories. They're going to blow people away. This is only just part of the story, but it's in current events today. I was excited about doing this story. Lots of info. Lots of people need to know that people clearly don't know. You see it as people cry out angry. I'm just wondering, why are we with the communist side, the Nazi side, clearly, and the Allies weren't with them before, but they are now? We've seen this rinse and repeat, back and forth, back and forth. Oh, this is the enemy. Next administration, oh, no, or two later, oh, no, that wasn't the enemy. This is the enemy. You just spent 12 years funding a war with this side. Then that regime you're not happy with, so you go back to funding the other one to overtake that one. And then you don't like that one, so you go back to the other one. It's no different with Russia, folks. When you look at it, you're going to find the truth. I couldn't make it up if my life depended on it. Maybe it does. Or maybe I'll just find my videos don't get shared and people are like, I don't want the truth. I don't care what the history books are. The Canadian media told me to read this, watch this, and believe that. And to throw away all history because it's not worth nothing. We just rewrite a new one. Oh boy, that's what the Nazis did too. Burn all the books, rewrite new ones. I don't want to be in any kind of world associated with that. I don't like worlds where people say, oh, this isn't recorded, and then they make a whole plan and they genocide people and then record the aftermath after, like, oh, how did this happen? Who's responsible? And that is a staple of colonialism. Brutal staple. But explain to me, folks, how all the Russian players, 1921 to 22, who lost against the Soviet Union, who overtook them, how is it that that went on, and then Joseph Stalin and his Nazi genocide style against the Jews, along with all those in favor of, we're all independent now, and they scream, Vladimir Putin, an evil man. Evil man? Federalism? Restoring republics? Give them federalism, division of powers? They're saying you're democratic, even though you took by force that parliament 8 years ago, by storm, fireball, and you're attached to Nazis, clear Nazis. You can't make this stuff up, guys. Greece just told off Zelensky and the guy who's with them, who's a Nazi. Wow. Wow. You'll even find history of Greece and Russia fighting for their lives against Ottoman empires. It's going to blow you away, folks, when you start really looking at history you obviously have never read. Because I know not all of you, my loyalist followers, but a lot of people out there and go, oh, no. If they just took the 2 minutes, even on a wiki search, and if you don't like that, and I don't trust everything Wikipedia too, I catch mistakes all the time, but then, okay, Britannica, that's UK, so if UK's got that, what do all the credible world experts say? Then you start reading the research papers. There's lots of them, folks. And if you've been studying world academics and you've been all throughout the world, names start to come around, you can know which one you click on because you probably know the guy, like myself. Oh yeah, I've had 3 Zoom meetings with him, or I've read 6 of his books. Definitely it's credited. There's no anyone coming forward saying, liar, So at what point do you say, hey, there's a problem here. What we're doing, what Canada's supporting, is no way, shape, or form a match to historical history. And I'm confused. Are we ally, Axis, or communist? I'm not sure. Because we seem to flip-flop. That coincides with Americans' change of governments. Democrats got the worst history. Worst evil history. Bar none. Bar none. That song 1814, down in the southern states. And then you look at what's happening in the northern states. You look at New York today. You look at Ontario today. Canada's Ontario. You look at what British Quebec was, what it is today. You look at California, BC, all pretty much the same. Washington, Oregon, Seattle, all that. Wow. What do you say, folks? Why are they all the same with the same colonial histories and nothing else is the same on the interior? Go through the states. They're not like that either. States largely protected in regionalism. Canada, not really. It's an illusion. Thanks. That's my video. Share. Get it out there. Everything was credible, verifiable, and the most important thing, dates launched here, names of the events, the countries involved. Go have a look for yourself. Do multiple sources and then check the accreditations. Oh, graduate of Oxford, graduate of Princeton, graduate of this university, wrote this many books. Well, is it fact or fiction section? Oh, it's fact, accepted by generally the entire world, majority. But that's not what Canada says, or the media. Media's got a whole different spin on this. Canada says a whole other thing. Well, that's easy. Canada doesn't want to be held account. Destroying the P5 at this point for all the Canadian politicians, and I mean all of them, is probably what South Africa could have done going back. Like, the regime isn't there anymore, but those regimes, the NDP, which was Labour Party, the Liberal Party, the Conservative Party, had they had the heads up that what they were going to go through, just like Canada does, because they've seen all these histories. They're the oldest and the longest surviving. They would have probably tried to do what Canada's doing too. Quick, attack Vladimir Putin, slam him, rah, rah, make up a new history, get all the Ukrainians going, even though a lot of the Canadian Ukrainians, at least what I grew up with, and again, my kids are 6th generation, I'm 5, all the Ukrainians in our life and in our family tree were all 5, 6th generation Canadians too, all a time before all this, absolutely way before everything that would become communism. In fact, even before that, which was the late 1800s into the early 1900s. Those Ukrainians largely were not there either. Generally, anybody all the way up to 1910 never experienced any of that nutty crazy, never got there. That's the truth. That's the truth. We start going over that all the way through to 1991, completely different mentality, different psyche. Those out of absolutely from 22 onward, different kind of Russian. And you got to be careful what you're cheering for. What you're cheering for. As history says, this is that history. You best be careful. Go look at the flags, look at the Allies, look at the war. Soviet Union won, and look who was the Soviet Union, who was involved in the Jewish Holocaust under Joseph Stalin. Those loyal states. It's not hard to figure out that Nazism is like Vladimir Putin, the Russians claim, because it absolutely was in real history. You can all read that for yourself. Thanks. That's my video. Share, share, share. Check it all out. Look it up yourself. You're going to find nobody's going to dispute it. Little teeny weeny mistakes. Yeah, maybe, oh no, there was this and this little artillery thing and it was an accident that they did that. Hey, whatever, man. It might be one little 3-week incursion that's off or something, but literally the whole history, I say, between those years and the genocides committed, the absolute destruction of the peoples over and over and over again, and removal of elections and democracy and humanity, that is repeated in everybody's single account. You'll find Axis, ally alike in the colonial powers, evil, evil, dirty evil, people, sadistic, wrong, bioweapons. Of course, not labs, it's bioweapons. You turn a farm with poisoned blankets, or you poisoned animals, right? When I say that, I mean infected, right? It's a bioweapon. You know what you're distributing to people. You have a cure, but it remains out of those people's hands for 150 years after there's a cure. Whoa. You can't just wipe that away and pretend that isn't true. And people who start talking like that, there's something wrong with you. When stolen children at the hands of armed military police, because that's what RCMP are, guys. Crown sworn under Commander-in-Chief. That's what RCMP are. The same design as Chancellor with Nazi Germany. That SS, you guys, go look at it. Chancellor is Governor General. Hitler didn't go for the presidency or the crown title. The leadership title. He went for absolutely Chancellor. The crown, colonial, customary law position, and everything that entailed. He convinced von Bismarck to do his bidding and grant him those powers. And in 1933, he did the Enabling Act, which is exactly like the Indian Act of 1876 in Canada, the first one. Canada won, found in Manchester with the pyramid, the structure built by the Reichman family. George Soros cleans out the Bank of England, all the third-class citizens of UK, and walks away in one day with $1 billion. Bankrupts that country. Reichman family supposedly wasn't in on it. Fourth richest family in the world. They're back up to 10th richest family in the world today. Out of 8 billion people, folks, nearly 8 billion people. I don't know. That's some kind of double whammy on the lottery, huh? Okay, share. Thanks. That's my video. It's massive volume. You can't diminish.